An overnight Russian drone strike on Odesa killed at least 2 civilians and wounded 15, reported the regional military administration on the 1st of May. The Russian attack damaged apartment blocks, private homes, a supermarket, a school, and several cars. Fires broke out in some areas which were extinguished by emergency workers, wrote the administration. As of this morning, government officials say at least 6 injured civilians are being treated in hospital, 2 of them in critical condition. Regional prosecutors are already at the scene gathering evidence to prepare another war crime indictment after the Russian drones targeted a residential neighborhood.
This is my mother's apartment after the strike. There's nothing left. Nothing.
Ukraine and the United States signed a landmark minerals deal. The agreement sets the stage for long-term cooperation between Kyiv and Washington on critical minerals, energy infrastructure, and future military assistance. This was reported by the Ukrainian Economy Minister Yulia Sviridenko, who signed the document on behalf of her government. U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent provided the signature from the American side.
Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end. The killing must stop, and both the United States and the government of Ukraine look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership for both the Ukrainian and American people.
Sviridenko called the deal a true partnership, noting that along with the US, Ukraine is creating a fund to attract global investment into the country. On her Facebook page, the economy minister listed the main points of the signed document. She stressed that Kyiv will retain full ownership and control over its natural resources, including those found in territorial waters. Ukraine will also determine which resources can be developed under the agreement. The fund is structured as a 50-50 partnership between Washington and Kyiv, with both sides jointly selecting investment projects. Management of the fund will be shared equally without either side holding dominant authority. Sviridenko confirmed that Ukraine's state-owned companies, including oil and gas producer Ukernafta and nuclear operator Energoatom, will remain under full Ukrainian ownership. The deal does not include provisions requiring Ukraine to repay any previous US aid. According to Ukrainian media European Pravda, the agreement includes a list of 57 minerals, ranging from lithium, cobalt, and uranium to rare earth elements such as neodymium and dysprosium. The deal applies only to new deposits licensed after the agreement enters into force and may be expanded only by mutual consent. Speaking at the United Nations, Ukraine expressed a clear stance on sovereignty and territorial integrity that are non-negotiable for the nation. On April 29, Ukraine's Deputy Foreign Minister Mariana Betsa called on the UN Security Council to take a clear stance on Russia's ongoing war, warning that any so-called peace that lacks justice would amount to surrender.
Sovereignty and territorial integrity are non-negotiable. Justice is not negotiable. Children are not negotiable. We call on the international community, and especially this Council, to reaffirm the truth. Peace without justice is not peace, it's a surrender. And this is what actually Russia wants. They want Ukraine to surrender. They want Ukraine to capitulate. So we have bad news for Russia. Ukraine will not surrender.
Betsa's remarks reflect a broader Ukrainian diplomatic push to reinforce global support for the country's sovereignty and to frame justice as a precondition for any lasting peace. Russia has been ignoring the US proposal for a full and unconditional ceasefire for over 50 days, stressed the Ukrainian president. Speaking on X about the consequences of Moscow's overnight attack, in which Russia launched 170 drones against Ukraine, he recalled that Kyiv also proposed to at least halt attacks against civilian infrastructure, as well as establishing a lasting silence in the sky at sea and on land. However, Russia's response to all of these is renewed shelling and assaults. Zelenskyy stated that continued pressure on Russia is essential to force it into negotiations. He also underlined that a strong Ukrainian defense and air defense force means saving more lives. The Trump administration notified Congress of its intent to approve direct commercial sales of defense-related products to Ukraine, valued at $50 million or more. This was first reported by the Kyiv Post, citing diplomatic sources on May 1st, and was later confirmed by the US Congress, notes wrote European Pravda. This marks the first such approval since Donald Trump returned to the White House over 100 days ago. The announcement comes on the heels of a broad review of all Ukraine-related military assistance, part of what the administration describes as a shift towards diplomacy and negotiated settlement over prolonged military engagement. The DCS program allows foreign partners to purchase American defense equipment directly from US companies, unlike the government-managed foreign military sales process. Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu warned that any deployment of Western peacekeepers to Ukraine would be viewed as a military threat, claiming such forces would be considered legitimate military targets by Russia's armed forces. According to Russia's state media outlet TASS, Shoigu, who earlier served as the Russian defense minister, made the remarks during an address to representatives of BRICS countries on April 30. He delivered a sharp critique of Western policies and addressed ongoing efforts by Ukraine and European partners to develop long-term security guarantees. Shoigu alleged that proposals to send international peacekeeping contingents into Ukraine signal what he described as preparations by European nations to occupy parts of western Ukraine. Ukrainian defenders regained a total of 115 Ukrainian positions over the course of April, reported the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrskyi. He stated in a Telegram post that these results were achieved thanks to active defense tactics used by Ukrainian forces. At the same time, the main efforts are focused on deterring Russian aggression, particularly in the Sumy, Kursk, Pokrovsk and Novopavlivsk directions. Syrskyi also reported on the results of deep strike systems, noting that in April they hit 62 targets on Russian territory, destroying military facilities and undermining Moscow's military-industrial complex. Earlier on Thursday, Syrskyi also stated that the Ukrainian unmanned systems units hit and destroyed over 83,000 Russian targets in April alone. This number is 8% higher than in March, added the Commander-in-Chief. Luxembourg will allocate an additional 20 million euros for Ukraine's defense and energy needs, with its military support now surpassing 250 million euros. This was announced by the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha on May 1st. The funds will be directed to critical needs, including the purchase of equipment and fuel and the modernization of energy infrastructure, noted Sybiha. Luxembourg's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Xavier Bettel arrived in Kyiv along with the country's Defense Minister Yuri Kabaks on April 30th. While in Kyiv, the Luxembourg officials also met with the Ukrainian president, who stated on Telegram that in particular they discussed Luxembourg's participation in the reconstruction of Kryvyi Rih. The estimated budget of the program is about 50 million euros. European integration as well as diplomatic efforts to achieve a lasting peace were among the issues discussed. Zelenskyy stressed that Ukraine is ready for a full, unconditional ceasefire for a sufficient period, which should be the first step towards peace. He added that Kyiv is ready for negotiations once the killing of Ukrainian people stops. Russia launched over 5,000 guided aerial bombs in April, reported the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense on Thursday. A quarter of them were directed against Ukrainian positions in Russia's own Kursk region, the ministry added. According to the statement, the number recorded in April exceeds the 4,800 bombs that were used by Russians in March. Since the beginning of 2025, Russian forces have launched over 15,000 guided aerial bombs on Ukraine.
Since 11th March, when the US proposed a full and unconditional ceasefire during negotiations in Saudi Arabia, Russians have used nearly 8,500 guided aerial bombs. Just think about the figure. 8,500 bombs against peaceful civilians in the middle of Europe.
For comparison, throughout the whole of 2024, approximately 40,000 such munitions were used, reported the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense.